Hello, guys. Indeed, I'm super stoked to be the keynote speaker for this first event. Full room, lots of known faces, and I'm pretty sure a few new ones. So we'll get going in a second. Yeah, let me get the clicker. So let me actually start with a short story. Probably about 2 years ago, I was at a board meeting with one of my portfolio companies, a SaaS software company. So we were discussing, as you can expect, the strategy, the roadmap, and we also look at some prototypes. 27 screens of beautiful dashboards, very sleek navigation, nice design. Everything was just beautiful. So about a few months ago, probably the end of last year, we had again a board meeting with that same company. But this time we didn't look at screens because we figured out that we should not focus on screens, we should focus on outcomes. And everything changed. Can you guess what changed in those 2 years? Anyone? Exactly. This is what changed. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be talking about the future of software, the way at least I see it, and I'm pretty excited to exchange some notes and discuss how you see it. So in my view, in the not so distant future, actually this is happening right now, software will evolve pretty dramatically. And we'll go from graphic user interface to agentic or digital workers. What does that mean? Well, it means that software, the way we know it, would evolve from systems which are used by humans to input data and output data through graphic user interface to autonomous or semi-autonomous digital workers that will help humans or, unfortunately, in some cases, replace humans in doing various tasks or achieve certain goals. Or actually, scratch the tasks. We don't care about tasks. We care about the outcomes, the end goals. So have this in mind. Now, the second thing that I think is already changing quite dramatically is that software is actually becoming from something reactive. You know, the humans go there, they input some information, do some interaction, and then the software gets some result back, to something that is increasingly proactive, meaning that it will reach out to humans when needed, if needed, and exactly with the minimum context that's needed. Again, take a second to think about it. So in essence, we are going to evolve from something like this to something like this. Now, you might think, okay, agents, AI agents, software cannot just become text prompts or, be completely replaced. But bear with me for a second. Now, the question is, if that is so obvious, why are we not doing it? Why are you not doing it? And the answer is because it's hard. And why is it hard? Because it requires a complete shift of the mindset of how we think about software, about what it does. So that change of mindset should evolve so that we think about every aspect of what we do in an AI-first manner. Now, as I said, that doesn't mean that a software should become a chatbot, or even worse, that a software should become a very shallow wrapper on top of a LLM. Not at all. What I'm talking is that for every single aspect of the functionality of the outcomes that the software is supposed to do, you should think how you can do that faster, better, easier for the customer, thanks to AI. Now, I'm going to give you some tips and hints, at least from my perspective, how you can do that. And of course, we have a very interesting schedule and great speakers coming after me. But let me first talk a little bit what are you going to face in terms of problems if you don't do this? Now, first and foremost, the current paradigms of user interfaces, despite the fact that they're very slick, very beautiful, very colorful, responsive, they work on mobile devices, etc., they are pretty complex and pretty discouraging. What's the problem with that? Well, the problem is that actually there is learning curve, there is friction. And which is the worst friction? The worst friction is the one that you face during onboarding or during sales calls. So unless you embrace this paradigm, you're going to be stuck with the old, discouraging, and quite complex paradigms that we're used to having today. Also, unless you get on the journey to actually re-envision your software, you miss the opportunity to actually differentiate because everybody else is still doing it the same way. But if you sit down and think about it, you have the opportunity to actually say, okay, I'm doing things the new way. I'm the next generation software in my category. And this really works because right now customers are ready, because of this transformational technology, to actually pay attention to newcomers, and you can attack the incumbents. That was not the case 2 years ago or 5 years ago, but now is the case. So don't miss that opportunity. Next, actually, in the process of rethinking how you do things, I'm pretty sure, because I see that day in and day out, that you're going to figure out ways to bring additional value to customers, to do things better than before. So it's not just replacing one functionality with AI-driven, the same functionality, but you're going to have the opportunity to radically improve certain aspects. And I'll give you some examples later on. And finally, putting my VC hat on, unfortunately, unless you do that, you're going to be not in the right category. So you'll be less attractive to investors, and yes, it affects valuation. Like it or not, that's the reality. Sorry, guys. So what are some, and this is not an extensive list, very simple but important principles that I've seen that can help you actually change, adapt your mindset and get on this journey to become an AI-first company. Now, first and foremost, it's a principle to minimize UI. Actually go from the graphic user interface to what I call minimal user interface. Why is that important? And what are some good examples? Well, here's one good example, Lovable. Now, this is the website, this is the product, this is the onboarding sort of workflow. It's everything, because at the end of the day, most websites today start with beautiful pictures, slogans, then they explain the benefits, then you go and sign up, then you create a project, define the project, blah, 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 and then you get to start actually doing something. All of this is removed here in the Lovable example. You just get to actually do stuff right away. They don't require anything from you. And this is a mindset change. So, good example, a lot of others. So try to minimize the UI as much as possible, because you very soon find that a bunch of the things that you actually have are not needed for the user to get to the final outcome if you properly use AI in between. Second thing, and it's pretty much related, try to reduce the data entry or even eliminate data entry for the users. Be a little bit more compassionate for the poor user. Try to auto-generate, auto-complete, auto-suggest as much as possible. Because now, with the large language models, this is super easy, and they are actually quite good at that. So a lot of the things that your users are currently doing could be eliminated. And here's another example. A portfolio company of ours, actually, it's a company that is pure AI company. They are building agents for the financial services. So the product itself is AI agentic. But until recently, they had this dialogue, which is actually how you configure the agent to handle objections. If a customer comes and says, okay, I don't want to pay, or I don't have money now, what do you do? So you go, define the objection, define the sample response, stuff like this. So what are we seeing here? Text box after text box after text box. Well, actually, no. Here we have a rich text box. So we have bullets and bold and italics. So it's good, I guess. It's not good. It sucks. I mean, this is crazy. So we discussed with the company, how come you're a agentic AI company and you have this? It doesn't make any sense. Why? And you know, it became obvious. And of course, what they did is think for 5 minutes. And now this dialogue is actually a button. And you know what? It works even better than asking people proactively to define this stuff, because you have a lot of context. For every customer, you already know what's happening. So the LLM is increasingly, actually exceptionally good at defining those, better than the humans. Of course, the humans can approve, tweak them here and there, but you know, all those text boxes and crazy stuff now is a button. So I'm pretty sure in all of your products, you can do a bunch of things like this. Next, try to minimize the user context. You know, don't overwhelm people with stuff that you know, requires 45 seconds at least of processing to figure out what you need. And here I'll show you an example from Payhawk. This is their new agents that they launched recently. And here's a nice example. You know, this customer is asking, is this expense within my team's budget? And they show within the context of the chat a very nice widget. It doesn't have to be text only, as you see. It's not just text, text, text. They show very nice chart depicting where they are, they're within budget and everything. Before that, that was a huge dashboard where you have to select my team, then you define the period, etc., and you get to this. Again, why? Minimize the context so the customer only gets what they need, because now with AI you can. Next, replace complex workflows, and that includes actually onboarding workflows with step-by-step agentic journeys. And here, another example from a company that I'm working with, Hackempreneur. This used to be, you know, the first thing that you see when you get into the product. You know, 15 steps, because, you know, the entrepreneur journey is complex. But again, 15 steps of different things. So it's like extremely discouraging and overwhelming. Well, we discussed the matter, of course. And now, you know, the journey starts with this, with their virtual assistant who says, hello, let me understand more about your product or your company. Do you have a website, or do you have a deck, or do you want to have a quick chat with me? And since I'm lazy, I said, yeah, I have a website, go figure it out. So I typed, you know, 11VC, and it said, you know, okay, I went there, I figured things out, I filled out the link canvas and prepared your journey, so let's go. How cool is that? You know, compare that to that. I mean, the journey is still there, but you know, the onboarding to the journey happens through a completely different way. And the bot is actually holding you hand in hand to take you there, and you're not overwhelmed. So this is what I'm saying, reduce complex workflows, and this could be done. Especially during onboarding, this is phenomenally good, because again, you want to shorten these sales cycles and get the customer in the product as quickly as possible. Now you can do it, and there's no excuse not to do it. Another example, again, try to re-envision your software. So again, it becomes from a reactive system to something that is like always on and really proactive. I don't have a screenshot with an example here, but there are many. One of our other portfolio companies, it does competitive analysis, for example. So instead of, you know, running a competitor analysis today to see what's happening, why not have the thing run it all the time? And if something happens, ping me to let me know. Something like, you know, Google Alerts, but on steroids. Because now it can do it, and it can do it much more complex things. So it's as if you have a person, a colleague who doesn't sleep, doesn't eat, and is always on the lookout. And if there is an issue or there is something that you need to react to, you get alert, and you get, again, a condensed context of what you have to do next. And Another one, very important. Nowadays, you have no excuse to be generic because, again, this technology allows you to be hyper-personalized in every aspect of the product. And actually speaking about onboarding and sales friction, this is one of the best ways actually to shorten your sales cycles because now every demo could be extremely personalized. With LLMs, you can auto-generate all the data that you need that would otherwise take the customers weeks or if not months to fill in the system with their data. Now you can go with a pretty good estimation or actually something that looks like their data, even if it's not completely right, but it's complete. So we can demonstrate right away on the first meeting their system. That was not easy before. And this will take, minutes up to an hour if you do it manually. And if you automate the automation, it will take seconds. So again, no excuse not to do that. And this applies both to enterprise sales and it could apply to PLG because you can program a way to attack certain accounts in a very personalized manner. So what they see is actually what the software will do specifically for them with all the information that is relevant or actually their actual information. And finally, try to think about what your software does in terms of what a person would do if there was no software. Or in other words, try to personify features. Why is that important? Because it changes the conversation a bit. This is another example with Table, one of our companies. So the big fancy data grid with nice filters that does competitor research is now Sophia. The valuation and comps metrics thing, that was the second thing in the menu, is Lucas. We have Mark for marketing research and then Hunter for company scouting. And people all of a sudden, your customers, start thinking about the product in a completely different way. And you can actually do this not just as a fancy wrapper, as a fancy name to call a boring feature, but if you start thinking about the feature as if it's a person, even if it's a digital person, you will immediately figure out how you can expand the scope of things that that person does, and from there you can expand the value that you bring to the customer. And you'll be unlike all the other competitors that are currently to the market. So hopefully, at least for some time, so hopefully that will be a cool differentiation for you. So in a way, in a nutshell, again, my message to you is to focus on the outcomes, not on the individual actions. And this is the kind of change in mindset that it looks obvious, but it's difficult to achieve. But our goal for us today is to get you started along this journey. And I'll leave you with a quote from a colleague of mine who said, "Stop building screens, start building superpowers." Thank you and enjoy the show.